our employer brand is all about growth and being a rocket ship and achieving and reaching for the stars. And then you have a slow year, or something changes, or your product's no longer as relevant, or your Peloton and everyone bought one and then they didn't.
Emily Firth is on a mission to build truth into the heart of employer-employee relationships. With 17 years of experience, she shares how you can navigate workplace challenges, build trust, and take control of your career.
People have said, I don't want to share my full self with you. I actually want some boundaries. You're not my family. You will let me go, and I'm just going to do my job and my results will speak for themselves. And I think that is a way to go, but then you have to be damn good at the results, because then that's all someone's going to see. When you need help to achieve your objectives, you haven't built those networks and those connections. So who are they going to go to when they need something next? Or who are they going to say is indispensable when it comes to layoffs?
Emily, welcome to Realistic Happiness.
Realistic Happiness. That's such a good title. I didn't know what the new title was. I love it.
Did you not?
I knew what you were pivoting to, but I didn't know that was the new title. I love it.
I've let the cat out of the bag.
Realistic Happiness. Okay.
Because it's happiness.
But real
Realistic.
talk. Yeah.
And real talk. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm all about. So.
Yeah, exactly. Your company's
Perfect.
called Truthworks.
Yeah,
as well.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The truth does work. Let's put that to the test.
Yes. I want to know, Emily, why is truthfulness so rare in a corporate setting?
Oh, I think because we have this ingrained idea of what leadership should be and looks like. And I think leaders over the years have conditioned themselves to believe that leading means showing no weakness, no failures, no vulnerability. And the truth is inherently something that makes you vulnerable, because you have to open up about twists and turns of where the business might go or what factors might be impacting it. You have to be really open and honest. And I think that's very frightening for many leaders who have got where they are by pretending they have their shit together and know exactly what's going on.
Wow. Yeah, that is, yeah.
So I think that's what people want.
Yeah.
I think people want to see a leader who is 100% together, no flaws, no doubt, knows exactly where everything is going and has it all buttoned down.
Is that because that gives us certainty, that like the business is going the right direction and I'm not going to be laid off and my role is secure?
Yeah, I mean, people want to feel reassured by their leaders. There was an interesting topic I was listening to this morning about, I don't know how in tune you are with British politics at the moment.
It's everywhere.
It's
yeah.
everywhere. It's hard to avoid. So sorry for you non-Brits, but I'll explain it in a way that hopefully makes sense. There's a new government that's come in, and unlike the last lot, they are extremely sort of realistic and down to earth, and they're getting criticised for being quite pessimistic about the outlook. But as the news presenter I was listening to this week pointed out, we shouldn't want our politicians to be chivving everyone along and cheering everyone up. That's what you go see a movie for. But we do somehow expect that from our leaders. We sort of expect them to always say, but on the bright side, the outlook's looking great, everything's going to be fine, business as usual. So I think maybe we crave that, but is it the best and healthiest thing to expect from a leader or to want from a leader? And is it the best way to actually run your business? I don't know.
It's tough. But then if the manager alienates themselves from the team and withholds information, it's very transactional and business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you lose your team a bit and they start making their own cliques, groups and, support
definitely.
systems within the team, or another colleague like, my manager did this. And
Definitely.
I think it spurs off that type of stuff.
I think also, though, people reflect what they see in their leadership. So if you see a leader who isn't able to admit that things aren't going so well, or that there might be some challenges ahead, or that they might need help, then that's what you then echo and emulate at every level. So then you get middle managers who are afraid to tell their bosses, well, we're not really going to hit these results until it's too late. And you get junior employees who think, well, I don't want to admit that something's going wrong in time for us to pivot, because that's not how I'm seen as senior and it's not going to be well received. So I do think you have to be more open as a leader to allow other people within the business to see that that openness can help you switch course. And some of it's ego driven as well, right? Some of it is, I want to be seen to be doing everything right. But actually, it's okay to talk about failure. And I think, podcasts like Elizabeth Day's have made people open up more and talk more about the failures of leadership, because often you fail 5, 6, 7 times before you get it right. And I think people also benefit from hearing those stories and understanding that even the leaders that got where they are today took some stumbles along the way and may have chosen a wrong path at some point in the company's history, but then corrected it, and actually showing people that honesty and allowing others within your team to then go and do the same and say, do you know what, we're going down this path, but it feels like a bit of a dead end. So I'm just going to call it. I'm just going to say, honestly, I don't think this is the right thing we're doing, but I have another idea.
Yeah. And it also relates back to talking about politics, for example, like Boris Johnson and stuff like that. People who openly make mistakes and they're silly or they're their authentic selves. It also plays in corporate, where I'm sure you've seen this before because you talk to a lot of companies and do workshops and stuff where, I don't know, there's a certain manager that's a bit silly or does things their own way, but they are doing it well. But they still get backlash like, oh, he's not very professional, or
Yeah.
oh, he swears a lot, in his
Yeah.
meetings and stuff, and oh, he's made a lot of mistakes. Like, should he be in that management position? So there's also that type of talk
Yeah.
in companies as well, which makes it like a taboo
Yeah.
to fail. If you're at the top, you are the best kind of thing.
Authenticity is a difficult word, though, isn't it? I think what I saw a lot of working with different companies and their employer brands was bring your authentic self, bring your true self to work. I think it's a bit of a trap because realistically, there are going to be things that you want to hold back. There are going to be levers of your personality you want to play in an authentic way. But I think it's a trap or a trick to say, bring everything that you are into the workplace. Who wants to show every single element of themselves? I think it's also okay to have some boundaries and to pull back things that don't work super well in a corporate environment. That's not about lying about who you are. It's not about being honest. It's about just knowing which parts of your personality to demonstrate when, and when to hold back a little bit, and when to keep some things for yourself as well.
Yeah, and that also ties in with politics in the workplace and like pulling strings and who to go to for this and oh, how am I going to get promotion? Or maybe if I'm, social and I go out with my colleagues and I speak to that manager or X person who's in a position of power, maybe they can sweet talk management and I can get that promotion. And I've fallen into that trap before. I'm just going to be honest, because I think it ties back into my school days where I was like, I wanted to be popular. So how do I get there? I talk to that person who knows that person, who knows that person, which is a valuable skill. Like networking is a great skill, but it can be tricky. Yeah, navigating politics like this to be ambitious and get a promotion and get a salary increase and get noticed by the people in the chiefs, for example, or at the top.
Well, that's the corporate environment. I think corporate environment is inherently political, and I think anyone who doesn't believe that isn't navigating it particularly successfully. Unfortunately, that's the game we play. But I think what people are realizing is there's different ways to play it. So you don't have to be at the pub every Friday to get that promotion. I think what you have to be is useful to people and to understand what you can do to benefit someone else. And if people see you as inherently useful or understanding their needs, then actually you can also carve out an amazing space for yourself. So my first corporate gig, I was in advertising agencies for years and years, which is really, it's a bit dog eat dog. It's a bit meritocracy. It's not super structured and hierarchical. A lot of it is you can be put in scary positions of power very young without really any formal training. So I was sort of used to that world where you just hustle and fake it till you make it. And the corporate environment is quite different. Obviously, you climb a very specific ladder. Hierarchy matters, roles matter, department matters, who your boss is a big deal. So I was extremely naive going into that environment. And I thought, well, I'll just be my entrepreneurial self and, hustle my way into all the opportunities I want and get things done that way. And I realized pretty quickly that's not the way to play the game. It has to be a softer sell. It has to be a spider in the web. You have to create connections. You have to network in a different way. I think it's softer. I think it's going for a coffee with people and saying, what are your business priorities? What are your KPIs? Oh, wait, I have really similar KPIs. How could we help each other? The other thing I realized is that everyone's budget is super siloed. So everyone has their KPIs, everyone has their own department's budget or their own team's budget. And it doesn't inherently set you up for collaboration because you've basically created a system where you've said, well, I only care about my stuff. And that makes it incredibly difficult to do really creative, bold, connected, joined up thinking. And that's one of the biggest frustrations I had coming from, an ad industry world where you can have an idea and you work together and you make it happen and you think big, and you're always encouraged to think in that way. I think sometimes corporate forces you to think smaller because of the way it's structured. And that's
Yeah.
not what they would say at the top, but I think the structure makes that very difficult unless you're inherently rewarded and specifically motivated by a different system to collaborate and work together. Everyone ends up in their different silos. It's very hard.
Before we talk about the political game within a company, can you explain what silos and cliques means? Because I've noticed that some people don't know what these words actually mean.
Yeah. Well, I think it basically means that you work within a smaller group or a smaller team. It doesn't necessarily just have to be your team. It could be a function or a focus area, and you don't really put your head above that area. This is my sort of sphere of influence. This is what I can control. I guess that's a silo where you're thinking in a silo. You're not thinking about the bigger picture. You're not thinking about how your work connects with other people's work. Working in a clique is slightly different. It's sort of closed door, we're in this meeting, but you're not. And I think that's one of the really powerful things when you realize you've not been invited to a discussion you could have really added value to. Your work's not seen as part of a bigger picture. It's really hard. So you can feel shut out and excluded from access to some of that power, access to some of that influence, even when you know you could contribute. So it's how do you get in that door? How do you get people to take you seriously? How do you show them what you have to contribute to that conversation? And that's not about throwing your toys out the pram and saying, I deserve to be in that meeting, which I definitely did a lot in my very naive way, several years ago, thinking, well, I should be in that meeting. I'm working in employer branding. What's more important than culture when you're thinking about running a business? But ultimately, you have to earn your spot there. So how do you talk your way into that room? How do you show how your work can support someone else's?
How do you talk your way into that room?
Well, I can tell you what I did, which was realize that one of the most valuable things I could do was build a team of creatives, because I think creativity unlocks a lot of magic and a lot of people wanted access to that magic. So when I had the chance to build a team, which I obviously had to pitch for and make a business case for, what I asked for were creative resources, and brought people onto my team that were super smart, super creative, could produce their own content, could, similarly to you, would get up and create something. And people saw that. It made us very visible. It made us able to tell stories that people would talk about. People wanted a piece of that. And then I offered to use those resources to help others as well. So, for example, working in employer branding, I would see that the head of sustainability was about to do a big CSR project, and they were going to paint the BIMA, like the big prison was being converted into a hotel. Everyone was painting it. It was an amazing story, but it was also an amazing employer brand story. So instead of saying, well, that's sustainability and I'm an employer branding, I thought, well, I want to tell that story. And I bet you they've got no one going down and videoing that. So I basically said, look, let's pool our resources. We can get a videographer down. I'll help you script it, help you produce it. This is also my world, and I know you don't have access to this, so let me help. And we created an amazing piece of content that benefited them, but also benefited us. Same with the DEI manager, it was let's go make friends. They're super under-resourced, but we have all of these stories of different perspectives and colleagues that we want to tell. So it helps you, it helps me. You've got advocates, but you're also being seen to be a team player and someone that doesn't just focus on their own little clique and their own output. So yeah, that was kind of how I did it. And that helped a lot.
What if you're in like a analyst team or finance team, which is not so creative?
But you have access to something. So what do you have that no one else has? So an analyst team, you have data. So instead of waiting for someone to come to you and say, can I have a report on this? Like look for a piece of data or insight that would help another team and say, you know what, I've noticed our gender equity is appalling at this particular level in this particular team. Go take that to someone. You've all of a sudden become a tool for someone else and you've unlocked something that helps them. So who are they going to go to when they need something next? Or who are they going to say is indispensable when it comes to layoffs? You have to add value in that environment. And that's how you play the game. It's not just about self-promotion or networking. It's about being genuinely useful and spotting opportunities and what you have that someone else doesn't have. So recruiters have insights. I always thought recruiters were in this incredibly privileged position. I was working in the recruitment team as an employer brand head and realizing, well, recruiters are hearing every day from candidates what's interesting, why they're turning us down, what their external perceptions of us were. So let's use that insight. And none of them were necessarily coming to me proactively with it. And then after a while, I saw the people that really understood would be coming to me saying, do you know what? I've got all this insight and I think we can turn it into some content, or actually I can help the work you're doing. And they wanted to play ball. They wanted to add value beyond just, I get bums and seats and get people to sign contracts. I understand what I have access to that you don't.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm in that position.
Yeah.
For some reason, yeah, we're drawn to the social aspects, and we get invited to events and etc. And we speak to very interesting people. So I absolutely agree. I mean, we get pulled over to analytics, employer brand marketing for
Yeah.
shoots, etc., and like little interviews and stuff.
You're the first
Absolutely.
ambassadors for the brand. You're the first
Yeah.
person people meet from the business before they get to speak to, their future boss. So
Yeah.
it's make or break. And I think you're incredibly valuable, but only if you're playing that role and
Mm.
only if you're acting like an ambassador.
How can being in a silo or a clique work against you?
Mm.
Like, what are the negatives?
Oh, I think it definitely works against you because you basically just do what you're doing and you to forget to support or help anyone else, and then you don't benefit from anyone else. When you need help to achieve your objectives, you haven't built those networks and those connections. You've shut yourself off. So it's the path of least resistance to just get your work done, hit your KPIs, especially if your bonus is tied to your specific team's objectives. So great, so you achieve in the short term, but you're never going to achieve anything bigger picture if you're just in that team. And what if that team disappears? What if those people leave? You haven't built connections beyond your immediate circle.
What if you're antisocial, introverted, or I think more importantly, what if you're working abroad? Like, and not even in the office and
Yeah.
you can't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I've built relationships with clients in our agency who I've worked with for 5 years and I've never met them in person. So I don't think being remote should be a barrier. I think everyone understands how to connect virtually these days. But I think it's different. You're not going to have those, as they talk about, water cooler moments,
Mm.
which I'm sick of hearing about, to be honest, because I think you can build the water cooler moments into your conversations. It's about taking 5 minutes at the beginning of every call to actually try and connect with someone on a human level, not just going straight to business. And that is hard if you're more introverted. But you know what? Remote gives you that opportunity to write some thoughts down, to prepare, to
Yeah.
have a post-it saying, ask how their marathon was at the weekend, or ask how the renovation's going, because last time you called, they had builders in and out of their house. Like, you have to find those moments of human connection. Otherwise, we might as well just be robots.
Mm.
No one wants to work with a robot. Like, you need to create a connection with your colleague, because when you ask them for something in return, you need to have that human to human understanding of each other. And we also need to, I guess, open up a little bit about ourselves as well. So people want to know who you are as a person. They want to know your strengths and vulnerabilities and your honest truths about yourself, because then they can understand where you're coming from. So tell people you're an extrovert, tell people you're an introvert, tell people you have a fear of public speaking, or, tell people when they ask you in a presentation to react to something immediately that you're a reflector and that you need time to sit with something. If people understand that about you, they don't think, oh, you're quiet or you don't have an opinion. They think, okay, she or he are a reflector. They need to take some time. Maybe I need to send this in advance to them.
Mm.
I think unless you get to those human truths about people, you can't have mutual understanding. And if you can't have mutual understanding, it's very difficult to work effectively with someone.
Yeah. I think right now people are just focusing on, okay, I clock in, do my job, go home. That's
Mm,
the best
mm.
case scenario, not getting attached too much
Yeah.
to people or the business itself, because anything can
And I
happen. You
understand
can be laid
why.
off,
I
etc.
understand why. People
Yeah.
have said, I don't want to share my full self with you. I actually want some boundaries because you're not my family. You will let me go. And I'm just going to do my job and my results will speak for themselves. And I think that is a way to go. It's also an option for you, if you want to just deliver what you've got to deliver, but then you have to be damn good at the results,
Mm.
because then that's all someone's going to see. It's a bit like when companies talk about being a rocket ship and they
Mm.
say, our employer brand is all about growth and being a rocket ship and achieving and reaching for the stars. And then you have a slow year, or something changes, or your product's no longer as relevant, or your Peloton and everyone bought one and then they didn't. And if your entire brand, whether it's personal brand or a company brand, is built around growth and results and success, and then something happens to change that, what have you got left? Where's that connection? And that happens to all of us, right? We have a bad month. We don't hit our goals. Something went wrong. But then you have none of that personal brand to fall back on, or none of that depth of connection with people to fall back on. So I'd say, by all means, if you don't want to connect with people at the office, I get it. I understand why you wouldn't want to show up and be vulnerable, because it's scary and it's ammunition for people to use against you potentially. And you have to be careful with what you share. But if you don't share anything, you're also losing out.
Yeah, you're not integrating.
Yeah, it's hard.
You're not part of the team.
But boundaries, I would still recommend. Boundaries are fine. I'm definitely not saying have no boundaries, because boundaries are great.
I think so. We're playing this dance essentially with our boss or with our employer, that we want truth from them, yet we're not being our true selves. It's so tricky. Like, how can we extract truth from our employer if they're not getting that back from us?
Yeah. I think it goes both ways. I think building trust is about being honest with people. Businesses actually have more chance and more opportunity to build trust than a lot of organizations. If you look at the trust that's been eroded with the media because of misinformation, or because of our perception that certain media is biased, actually businesses do pretty well in terms of public trust. People actually see their businesses, I think especially since COVID, where there was more duty of care placed on the employer. People see businesses as a source of truth and a source of more trust if they can get it right. But equally, it's very quickly lost. So I guess in terms of your question, how can we expect it from leaders if employees aren't demonstrating it? I think it has to go both ways. I think if we expect people to be truthful and honest with us, we also need to bring a little bit of ourselves and a little bit of that humanity. But no, it's not easy. It's like a chicken and egg. It's like a chicken dance, right? Who's gonna, or a game of poker, who's gonna show their hand first?
Yeah.
But because of that trust erosion through layoffs, because of that feeling of insecurity and that feeling that you're a commodity and that a business will lay you off, it's difficult to get back to that idea that we actually care about each other in any way, shape, or form. Also makes it very difficult for colleagues to care enough to want to deliver your business results.
Yeah.
Because they think, well, I guess if we don't, I get laid off. But you're not going to have my back if I, burn myself into the ground to get to these results. So how do we build that mutual sense of we're all in it together? I mean, that has to come from a little bit of mutual vulnerability, right?
Yeah. And there's this double, I don't know the actual term, maybe you know it, when like corporate speech, when it has a double meaning, when someone says like, as per my previous email, it's like, fucking read. Can you read? It's that double meaning, even in the office, where people are kind of like dancing around what they actually want to say.
Part of that is legal. So I think the reality is, and again, my naivety when I joined corporate many years ago was, well, why don't they all just say what they mean, or say what they think, or talk about the real reason this is happening? Part of it is legal. Part of it is protecting yourself as a business. And inherently, business leaders need to be savvy about how they phrase things and what they take accountability for. And that is unfortunately a reality of running a big corporation. You also have shareholders and investors, and your words can be used against you. So it is very difficult. But I also think there are ways to deliver a, legally sensitive message while also showing real empathy. And I don't mean crying on LinkedIn and making it all about you.
I'm thinking of the CEO, the photo of him crying.
Exactly. That's not real empathy. I mean, centering yourself in that experience is really not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about understanding the receiver and what they might be going through.
I think what comes to mind, even for example, like you said, your naive younger self, same. I mean, I do lectures at university, and the kind of questions I get is, oh God, the transition from like my bubble at uni, where we're so authentic and we're like ourselves and we dress how we want, to then go to job interviews and start a job in an office. Like that transition and playing the game and not knowing there even is a game. Yeah,
It's
it's just
scary. And no
mind-boggling.
one teaches you that at university, right? No one
No.
sits you down and says, okay, you're going to go into a corporate environment now, and here's how it's going to play out. You're going to go in wide-eyed, thinking the brand's amazing, thinking the business is amazing, and thinking everyone's going to be there to help you learn and grow. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they are. A lot of it is the luck of your manager.
Yeah.
But I do always think with a manager, if you're not clear with them on what you're hoping to learn, what you're hoping to get out of that experience, then they're also not going to go to bat for you. I think we have a lot of one-sided expectation that we show up at a job and I don't want to call it entitlement because I don't believe it is, but I do think we've been conditioned to believe that everyone should automatically understand us whilst
Mm.
becoming more closed off ourselves. Um, I see a lot of people, a lot of younger people going into work now feeling frustrated really quickly and not giving it the time to understand that this is a whole new environment and there are different rules and there are different ways to navigate it, and they give up really quickly. I think because they've been told it will be easier to be your own boss and, you know, leave and be an entrepreneur. I'll tell you, as someone who is their own boss, it is not easy. It is really not easy. And what I learned in corporate serves me incredibly well with clients because I understand their struggles. I understand what they have to navigate. I understand that they have bosses and bosses and KPIs and silos and all of these things. And I know how to speak their language. So I think if you lose out on that experience because you think it's going to be easier just to be your own boss, then you're also missing the benefits of learning from that environment and all of the, you know, the advantages of getting this kind of huge playground to explore of the
Yeah.
business world within the safety of a monthly salary. Like, don't underestimate that.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial life is hard.
Yeah.
It's fun, it's rewarding, it's like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
But thank God I had all of that experience working for other people before I decided to employ people.
Yeah, I think you need to fail and yeah, actually live that experience, like you said,
Mm,
before making such drastic decisions like being self-employed.
yeah.
But I think when we leave school and when we leave university, because they have these kind of silos as well,
Mm.
and oh, who's popular and who's the nerdy group,
Mm-hmm.
etc. You want to escape that, and when you're an adult, you're like, thank God,
Oh
like
no, it's
that's
worse.
so bad. It gets worse.
It's worse. Why is that person getting a promotion and not me? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really hard. It's
yeah,
really hard.
yeah. The mind games, yeah, the comparisons,
Yeah,
the competitions.
yeah. But that's the world, and I think we're not. I was reading a lot about, so I'm a parent of two small children, was reading a lot about the way we parent now and the fact we try and protect our children from everything, or we try and, you know, make sure they always have an amazing experience and they always have a great day every day. The reality is some days are hard and we need to build more resilience over the years. We need to let our kids figure out their own problems. It's like if your kid's being bullied at school, I feel like parents now are straight in. You
Talk to
know,
the
they're telling the
teacher.
school exactly how to resolve it. They're tracking down the child's parents and accosting them and saying, you need to sort your son or daughter out. And the reality is that's not how problems get solved in the world. So we need to be teaching our children to go stand up for themselves, not by, you know, kicking the kid in the shins, but how do you have a dialogue? How do you tell someone that you don't like something? How do you advocate for yourself? Those are skills you build really early. And if we try and make everything easy, it's called, I read it was called like snow plow parenting. It's like you get the snow plow out and clear the entire way for them
Mm.
and make sure their path is smooth. Then you become an adult and you think, well, why isn't this easier? Why is my manager not clearing the way for me to succeed? Well, because some of that has to come from you. Have to learn to advocate for yourself in whatever way you're able to do that.
Mm.
You know, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, learning those skills to be able to say, here's what I need to succeed. Here's how you can help me, and here's how it's going to benefit you. Simple, but effective.
I was going to ask you, how do you advocate for yourself? Because I think in interview stages, for example, we want that job so bad.
Mm,
And the current situation, like jobs are scarce.
I'll do everything.
I'll do
Yeah.
everything, please. And
Yeah.
then I think when you start your job and if you do advocate for yourself and you say, these are my boundaries, don't text me during my lunch, don't text me on the weekends. I need this amount of support.
Yeah.
I'm ambitious. I want to be a manager next
Yeah.
year. That could be seen as like, oh, that's not what you sold to me during the interview.
Yeah.
You know, I thought you
Yeah.
were this like, yes person,
Yeah,
you know, that'll do
exactly.
anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, anyone hiring yes people is making a mistake because I love having people around me that challenge me and don't just say yes and say, actually, we should be doing this in a different way, or I don't think you're right. I mean, there's a way to say that, but don't hire yes people. It's a waste of time. But if you are in that situation, I think you just have to remember it's a value exchange. So there is a reality, and I've learnt this also since, running a business with my business partner. We realize that, we have people on our team, we have to pay for those people, and that money has to come from business we win and success that we achieve as a small business. So realistically, everyone's in it together, and there needs to be a value exchange. So we need everyone to pull their weight in order that we can pay for them and keep the business running and keep our clients happy. So I think sometimes people just forget it's a value exchange. So instead of going in saying, right, I need this, here are my boundaries, what can you do for me? You have to also balance that with, and here's how I'm going to help achieve your goals. And are there any wider business aims I should be thinking about? And hey, manager, what are your pain points? If I'm going to ask you to do all of these things for me, is there a task I can take off your desk? Is there something I can automate for you? Because remember, we're often I'm putting my nearly 40-year-old self in the young, cool, tech savvy upstart bracket, which is not true. But the younger gen are way more savvy with automating things, generally making things slicker and smoother and knowing tips and tricks. We are queens of the life hacks, right? So that's what you can bring to your manager. How can I make your life easier? You know what? I've noticed that you're scheduling things this way, or I've noticed that we have a system that I could make 10 times easier. That's a value add. And then when you say to that manager, okay, you know what, I've noticed that I'm working my lunch break every week, they're going to say, you're absolutely right. But what are you giving back, before you start asking and asking and asking and asking? This is a value exchange.
I agree. I'm just thinking of it as a manager's perspective when I had interns, etc. Yeah, the ones that went above and beyond and made my life easier. Yeah, I was more like, oh, you're going to work from Italy?
Fine,
Please,
go.
go for a month. I don't care.
Well, it's trust.
Yeah.
Again, it comes back to trust and being open and transparent. How can I help you? Here's how you can help me. But we just don't communicate. And I think also part of the challenge is tech. It's, I don't have to really communicate. I don't have to deal with a customer service agent. I can just, deal with a bot. We forget how to have conversations. Two-way conversations, not just here are my needs outlined in an email.
Yeah.
But an actual human to human, here's where I'm struggling. Where are you struggling? Let's help each other.
Yeah. And
what
also,
manager doesn't want that?
yeah, with tech, I just wanted to share a little story. Maybe other people can relate.
Yeah.
I can relate. It's, like Microsoft Teams, you can see people's statuses. One of my juniors, basically, after 6 months, she said to me like, oh, you don't know this, but I'm at my desk, even if I'm working abroad, and I'm wiggling my mouse and making sure it's green. So you see I'm there and I'm working. I said, I am so busy. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not
check.
tracking your mouse.
I don't check. But the fact that that's ingrained in some people because of previous traumas or experiences, or just the fact it is trust and tech and this shows
But
online.
I love that we are now creating solutions to human problems that don't actually solve the problem. So instead of rebuilding trust, we're creating tech solutions like mouse trackers.
And the wigglers, yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, employees are using hacks to basically look active. And it's like, who's benefiting from that?
Yeah.
You're not genuinely productive. You're not building trust. It's not useful. What a waste of time.
It's mind games.
But it's crazy that you're building a tech solution without actually thinking, well, what's the root cause of this misalignment? Like lack of communication, lack of human connection, lack of genuine trust between employer and employee. So instead of an employer having that conversation, which is like, look, to be honest, I am worried that, you're not spending all day doing the task. Can you reassure me? Maybe I don't understand your ways of working, or maybe, I don't understand how we're not achieving our goals. Is there a reason that we're not hitting our targets? Instead of tracking you, have the conversation. I mean, I don't know what trackers solves. It's just creating more barriers and more mistrust.
Yeah. And then there's that part of it. And then there's also distant managers, that like, oh, they're so cool because they let me do whatever I want. But then where are they when you need something?
Yeah, exactly. I think everyone loves the word empowerment. Would love to be empowered and free. But empowerment is a dangerous and massively overused word because it basically just transfers all responsibility onto one party. and says, well, you are now empowered. I've empowered you to achieve success with this business. Off you go. But it also means I've left you dangling with little structure and framework. Real empowerment is freedom within a framework. It's basically saying, here is what we're going to achieve. Let's map out how you're going to achieve it. And then you go and own it. And I will be here and check in, and you can manage up to me how it's going. But often empowerment is sort of used as passing the buck, I think.
Yeah.
You're empowered, you go fix it.
Yeah. It's like being an entrepreneur in a huge business
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
department.
And that's not really fair. I mean, realistically, you cannot expect people to act like they own your business. You know, we want people to act like owners, is something I hear a lot from CEOs and leaders and people leaders that I work with, but they're not owners. So how are you incentivizing them to have the same level of care that you do? And we often recruit people by saying, help us shape the future of X. Well, that's your dream. It's not my dream. So you either have to get people to really believe and care for that dream in the same way that you do, which is very hard, right? Because it wasn't their dream in the first place. Or you have to understand what motivates them and what they're hoping to get out of it. Maybe they want to experience different markets and have that growth opportunity. Maybe they want to, learn how a P&L works and how to actually run a profitable business. Like, give them those tools. Like, tap into what motivates them. You can't expect to motivate them through what motivates you. Doesn't make any sense.
Yes, that's like company culture.
Yeah.
As well. How do you communicate that without sharing your own ambitions as a business owner? Because that might not be what.
Well, your own ambitions are exciting, right? It's nice to hear what your leaders care about, and it's nice to hear passion. But there needs to be an overlap with what your people are passionate about. And often we do too much talking and not enough listening to what actually drives them. Not everyone wants to be a manager. Not everyone's aspiration is to, eventually, I think my previous boss when I was working in employer branding said, one day you can be head of recruitment like me. Like, I've got no interest in doing that. And they were really stumped, because then they thought, well, that's what's motivated me. So I've tried to motivate you in the same way. But what they hadn't actually taken the time to do is discuss my actual goals and ambitions and carve out ways for me to achieve those things instead. And that would have probably meant I stayed longer as well. But if that was the only path I could see, was the one that they had in their mind for me, it's very difficult to then feel excited and motivated to keep pushing. But that's on me as well. It's also on me to say, no, do you know what? This is the kind of thing I want to do. But I didn't know. And I think that pushed me just to go and do my own thing, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this what you were talking about in your workshop recently then, about embedding culture? Because I'm very new to this.
Yeah. Well, so the workshop we did recently with the D2 Collective, lovely female-led community here in Amsterdam and beyond, was really about how you go from words in culture to reality. So how do you start with an idea of what you want your culture to be, and how do you actually actualize that and make it more true and more real for more people every day within your organization? And that's not easy, because you can't just say we want our culture to be one of ownership or care and it happens overnight. You have to bake that into your policies. You have to bake that into where you value and remunerate people's service or reward their achievements. You have to bake it into what you train people for, and also what your leadership embody. So there's so many facets of culture. And yes, you can say, we're a place where we care about every individual, or we care about your individual self. But if you don't have any flexibility in your policies, then how are you caring about the individual? If you have a one-size-fits-all approach to promotion paths, then how are you caring about the individual? You're not. You're saying everyone has to either want to grow into managerial role or not. What about people who just want to develop their skills and really become an expert in one thing? So I think it's very easy to write words
on the wall.
Very
have
easy.
Your values displayed.
It's extremely easy to write words. It's extremely hard to make them real and make them matter. So that's what we were workshopping, was how do you get to that truth of who you really want to be and make sure your leaders really understand what that means and what that will take to achieve that kind of culture that they're looking for. See if they really mean it, because there's often some sacrifice or some compromise or some awkward role modeling they have to do, which is out of their comfort zone. And then how do you make it real? How do you actually shift and move the levers within your organization that are going to actualize that culture? So how do you change your learning and development program? How do you change the way you onboard people, for example? And then make it matter is about getting people to care about it as much as you do. Why is a caring culture going to help us achieve our business results? Really making it feel less like an HR thing and being something that is the foundation of your success. And there's a conscious choice to build a culture that will actualize these results in this way. And that's what I think doesn't happen a lot, is that real joined up thinking, and conscious choice of, I'm building this specific culture. So I look at businesses like, like Chobani, who have built a very conscious culture, big yogurt company in the US. The CEO and founder was an immigrant himself. So his entire mode is, we're going to build community, and we're going to do that from the ground up. So from everything from where we start to think about where we build our factories, will be in a place that a lot of minorities live or a lot of immigrants live. And we're going to provide opportunities for that community through where we make those business choices. And we're going to make everyone a shareholder in the business. Now, that's an extreme example, but you're building success, you're building a successful business on a conscious culture, an intentional culture that says, this is who we are, this is who we want to be. And it doesn't have to be that same model. It can be, right, we're a performance-driven culture and we're all about being the best. And we're honest about that. We're not a family. We're a team, Netflix style, the bottom 10% don't make it. And that's honest. That's what people sign up for. But then you have to remunerate them in that way. You have to say, okay, but we give the most flexibility because we trust that people are results orientated. And we know that they're going to go hard because that's what we've sold them on. And we've said, come here and do this, but this is what we'll reward you with. And this is how we achieve our results. Now, that means you might lose out on people who need something different. And you always lose people through making a conscious choice. And I think that's what leaders find very difficult, is consciously choosing, this is who we want to be, and it's not for everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah, and it's staying with that decision, because the main issue at the moment is that people list their values in a job description. Like, we stand for directness, we stand for diversity and XYZ. So you go in with that promise, like, the company's like this is what I'm expecting, like you said, in every crevice of my role, of my tasks. And when you don't see that, for example, if it says open communication, very direct, and then there's whispers like, oh, you can't know this, you're not important enough, you're not the special one to know this side of information. That's when you lose trust as an employee. You're like, so you don't live by your values. What else are you lying about?
And often people embed the theory, but then what they haven't embedded is, what do we do when we don't live up to that? So what is the process for calling out behaviors we don't tolerate? Because your culture is also formed by the behaviors you tolerate day in and day out. So if in that example, you've said we are an open culture, we're super direct, there's no back channels, that's not how we roll, then what is the process and policy when you have whispers for shutting those whispers down? And how do we actually empower employees with zero retaliation to call out those behaviors that aren't in line with your culture? That takes a really strong, clear, repeated, conscious culture.
Yeah,
with
agreed.
everyone really buying into, this is the way we do it. And leaders showing time and time again what they mean by it and how they expect it to show up.
So everyone is involved, right? Like, the leaders need to show it, the business, like the actual, even the events, the business hosts, etc. Everyone needs to show the values.
Yeah, exactly. And build that into genuine, tangible behaviors, and look at what behaviors rewarded, what behaviors tolerated, what behaviors not tolerated.
Yeah.
That's how you really start to build through culture. And it's that repetition. It's seeing that someone who behaves in a way that's counter to our culture will be called out on it. There will be some consequences, not necessarily drastic ones, but just someone saying, look, it's not how we act here.
Yeah.
And that takes making everyone realize that you can be courageous and you can stand up for that by having a culture where that is supported.
Yeah, I agree. And also, for example, if it gets changed halfway through as they're growing, so for example, if it's like, we like to be in the office. I think it was Stephen Bartlett said it during his talk, like, we're very specific about our culture.
Yeah.
We like to come to the office because it's a production company.
Yeah.
We have to be there. We have to edit. We don't outsource anything.
Yeah.
So you're either with us or you're not, essentially. Putting words in his mouth, essentially, that's what he said. But if he was to change that, oh, there's a really talented person based abroad.
Yeah.
And now we're a flexible hybrid company.
And you make exceptions.
Then everyone else says, but I would like to work from home because I have a sick dog. Or I have X, I have this.
Yeah. There will always be a need to change course as a company, but you have a duty, if you've developed a conscious and transparent and clear culture, to explain why you're making those changes. And to, if you are making an exception, to create new ground rules and new boundaries and make sure that everyone's clear. I mean, clarity is a lot of it. Or honesty. You know, this is why we've had to make this change. This is why we've had to make this exception. There is a business reason. And maybe if there's a business reason for you to need an exception, then it's a conversation. But of course, businesses need to change course sometimes. But what we don't realize, again, to the beginning, is like that's a change process. So you also have to help people understand that change. Doesn't mean everyone has to like it, but you do have a duty to explain your reasoning.
Yeah, instead of just saying, hey, now we're 5 days in the office.
Yeah. But that will have been a conscious calculation. And I think many people speculated that that's also a way to get people who they don't want anymore to leave without having to do layoffs. So everything you do is a statement of intent of what you stand for, what your values are, and what culture you're trying to create. And that will be polarizing sometimes. So they will lose people asking everyone to come back to the office 5 days. And they'll lose out probably on a lot of people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who live further away because they maybe can't afford to live near where the office site is. They might lose people with caring responsibilities, and they'll probably lose some amazing talent. And you will start to see a more homogenous culture. But that will have been a conscious calculation. Nothing happens by accident.
Wow. I think that's crazy. And it's true, right? It's honest. And with your experience then working with different companies, etc., do companies stay the same, like with culture and beliefs, or will they always change? I'm just asking as like an employee if I need to be adaptable, essentially.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially when we work with scale-ups, one of the things that leadership teams on scale-ups often find hard when we're working with them as consultants is, well, I want to stay agile. I don't want to put too much down in writing. I don't want to have too much of a 5-year plan or too much of a locked culture, because I'm still figuring out, you know, what kind of business this needs to be. And often the market's moving so fast and also pivoting in response to it. So it can be scary. So I think there needs to be some flexibility and fluidity. And yes, employees who generally join a fast moving company know that there are going to be more moving pieces. And maybe they like that. Maybe they like the opportunity to shape it. But you don't just have to be a passenger, right? You don't just have to be a passenger. You can also hopefully influence those cultures that are fast moving and fast changing, and use your voice as an advocate or a detractor internally to say, you know what, this doesn't work, and here are a few reasons why I think we could do it differently. Takes a lot of guts, but that is the opportunity with a culture that's still in flux, is you have the opportunity to shape it. And we see a lot more of that, you know, employee resource groups using their power and their voice to advocate for groups that leaders might not have thought about. And that's the reality as well, is you ask leaders to consider something from every single angle, and they can't always. That's why employee voices are so important, used constructively and being engaged enough to challenge your leadership in positive ways, to think about who they might have missed in that policy or that approach or that change, and make sure they really realise and they're really doing it consciously with all angles considered. I think that's also a responsibility. Back to that idea of speaking up, right? And advocating for yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to make sure you do that when things are changing. But yeah, companies in hypergrowth often want to flex. I think it's still important to have some pillars you can stand on. So allowing for some nuance, allowing for some flexibility, but knowing what your non-negotiables are and the key principles that you'll stand by is always great. So I always try and talk to companies about trying to fix their core. So thinking about your mission, vision, and values and behaviors, and thinking about those things as relatively fixed. And then your EVP can flex a little bit within that. So the way that those values show up, the way those behaviors show up, can impact your employer promises differently at different times, as the situation changes. But if you can try and keep those core elements relatively fixed, it makes it easier for talent to get on board, because it takes a long time to embed changes like values, because they're so fundamental. They're the principles that you stand on. They say, we will try and achieve this mission and vision, but not at the cost of these things.
Yeah. And what if, for example, the market at the moment is really tough to like find work, etc., and you feel kind of stuck where you are, but you want to make it work and you want to play the game. Do you have to distance yourself then and play the game, or can you do it in an authentic way?
Well, the benefit of being within an environment or corporate environment is there are other roles within that organization. So I think figuring out if there is another opportunity within the same organization for you is always worth doing, because you already know that organization. You already kind of know how decisions get made. You know how to build a business case there. So you're going to be in a better position to pivot maybe within a structure sometimes than pivoting to something else, somewhere else entirely. So you've already learnt the politics of that organization. So is there any way you can use that to your advantage? Is there something you want to achieve while you're there? Or is there a different department you want to shadow? Like, still use that influence that you've built, because it's a lot to throw away when you're getting frustrated.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking, is there something, or is there another opportunity within this organization? Have I actually got everything I can get out of this? Or is it just a manager that's put me off? If so, there are 50 other managers in the business.
Yeah.
Who can I go and pitch my skills to? Maybe they'll understand what I can bring to their team. And we often think we've got to look straight outside. Maybe we don't always see the internal opportunities because they don't get posted internally, or they're posted externally and filled real quick before anyone internally has a chance. But if there's a team you want to be on, how are you going for a coffee with that manager or people on that team to say, look, if you hear of anything, actually, I'm fascinated by this team and I would love to show you what I could do for you. And I think that's what we often miss, is that there is still a job market internally.
Yeah.
Whether you see it or not.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something really important, which is that networking element. Is that, what can I do for you? And even just like maybe collaborating slightly on a project, or just getting to know them. I actually know someone, I won't say who they are, but that recently they've been there 10 years at the same company, kind of fed up with the politics and applying internally for roles. I think 3 or 4, and rejected, even doing the interviews
it's internally. A cold apply though. How do they know who you are?
Yeah, exactly. The company is huge. So, she asked me like, oh, I'm so stuck because I'm getting rejected internally as well. Where I think that politics, that game, that I need to actually get to know that person to kind of sway to my preference.
But you're also going to already have so much more of an advantage than an external candidate. You already know the brand guidelines, you know the tone of voice, you know what that part of the business does. You have a ton of people you can speak to internally to understand what their business priorities are. Build a deck, like go build a business case for what you do. You have such an advantage to create something super bespoke, super tailored, using what you know about that team's objectives. No external candidate has that. So you have such an advantage. And I think often we don't use that advantage, or we just think, oh, I'll just apply. And they might, I'll have an advantage from working here. Well, no, you don't have an advantage just because you've worked for the brand. You have an advantage if you use and leverage what you know about having worked for that brand and that business to create something super specific in your application that they need. Then great, but no one's using it.
I'm going to send this to her.
Yeah, you should. You
She
should.
needs to hear
you
this.
should.
Yeah.
It's hard though. I think we just get lost in our own panic or our own feeling of failure when we get rejected, and we're not thinking laterally about how we could do things differently.
Yeah, agreed.
And we think it's all about us, like, why am I getting rejected? But it's not. It's as much about their needs. What are they looking for? Or what are they struggling with? They're hoping this new candidate will come and fix for them. And how are you getting under the skin of that problem they're trying to solve, instead of thinking, well, why don't they pick me? Why don't they know how great I am and where my potential lies?
Yeah,
because they don't know you. They don't know you. But you could get to know them.
Yeah.
Make it about them, not you, I'd say, is also helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Emily, was there anything specific you feel like it's important to talk about or share, like a trend or something, before we
Oh
wrap
God.
this up?
Anything specific? Okay. Give me a minute on that one.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's a very broad question. What do I want to talk about? So if I was advising someone on how not to get eaten by the corporate machine, I would say know your end game. So know exactly what you want to get out of your time at corporate. What is the case study you're going to tell when you leave here? So I've had so many opportunities in my more entrepreneurial business, in the business that we set up, the Truthworks, because of the connections I built my time in corporate, but also because of that reputation and also because of the story I can tell about my time there. So for me, it was making sure that my manager and the partners I work with knew that I wanted opportunities to speak publicly. And you get those opportunities really quickly when you've got a big corporate name behind you, but not so much when you're starting out as an entrepreneur. So what do you want to leverage in your time at corporate? Is it that you want to go experience another market? I mean, I got to go and work in China and Singapore and experience those cultures and how you navigate the media landscape there. I wouldn't go and do that as an entrepreneur starting out. So you have all of these amazing access to learning and development and opportunities when you're in corporate. So know what your story is going to be when you leave, what your case study is going to be, and what you're going to tell about what you did, and just keep focused on that. I think otherwise you get so bogged down in just trying to hit my KPIs and just trying to roll with whatever new business objectives we have to hit this week. But you have to remember, back to advocating for yourself, what do I need to get out of my time here that aligns with business objectives and that I can sell in and that I can convince my boss to let me do? But what am I going to get out of my time here? What's the story I'm going to tell when I leave?
That's so important. And I don't think people look into the future often enough. Or the narrative I get is, I'll work here for 2 years, save up enough, and then live my dream, and then move to Spain, and then do this. Yeah.
So great if you know what your dream is, but it's not just money that's going to get you there. It's the connections you made and that alumni network as well of people who've gone on from your big corporate company to go and work elsewhere. You now have access to this amazing network. But what will they say about you when you leave, and what will they remember you for? Because there's, 10,000 people working there. How are they going to remember you?
I think we should, I think that's the deepest, like most.
That's deep.
Yeah,
Legacy.
Yeah, legacy, literally. Emily, how can people work with you, Truthworks? Can you give us a maybe brief bio of what Truthworks actually is?
Absolutely. So the Truthworks was founded on the idea that what really matters and what really works when it comes to talent is telling the truth. So we help businesses connect to their authentic culture, really own who they are, warts and all, that conscious culture that we were talking about, and work to embed it through every element of the organization. So we work the full spectrum from internal comms, recruitment marketing, employer branding, dealing with difficult culture change, leadership skills, all of those lovely, juicy elements of culture. And we do it all with a smile, but also by being super, super honest. So the relationships we built are based on having that real partnership with the brands and businesses we work with. So get in touch. We have a website, thetruthworks.co, and you can email us or on LinkedIn, or you can just connect with me on LinkedIn and get in touch. And I love to talk all things culture challenges. So let's go.
Yeah, your feed is just every day. I'm just like, I get a post and it's like, bam.
Oh,
bam.
I need to do more, Daisy. I think you inspire me, to be honest.
Please, because I actually like to see, I think other people will follow you after this as well. Like, just, it's refreshing just seeing what you teach, your philosophies, how you're, like, different things you're finding out about companies, etc., and the trends. Like, it's just great. It's really, really good to see it.
Love it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Thank you so much. This has been, just for the audience, this has been rescheduled. How many times? 3 times?
We made it work. We're busy ladies. We're in demand.
Yeah.
We've got lives and cats and
building empires.
Exactly. We made it happen.